5 mistakes amateur investors make. 1, if you and your partner decided to go into business together and you said, hey, you have a company that's worth $100 and you each had 50% of the company, and you said each of you will have 5 shares that represents 50% of the company, each of those shares should be $10 a piece. If you now said, let's have 20 shares and we each get 10, well, now each of those shares should be $5 a piece. If I gave you a pizza and it was 12 inches and you cut it 8 ways, you have 8 slices and you still have a 12-inch pizza. If you now cut it 16 times, you have a 12-inch pizza still, just more slices. So why would a company want to make a stock split? Well, sometimes it's marketability. Sometimes it's hard to use these big values in share prices and it's hard to deal with. It makes it more accessible for investors to have a share price that's lower. For example, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, he has 2 share classes, an A share class and a B share class. The A share class is the share class that has never split its shares. To have a Berkshire Class A share, now they're sitting at over $470,000. The B share class represents about 1/1500th of a share of an A share, and that has tracked it very closely over time, and that sits at about $310. Now, companies can also do reverse splits. Sometimes the share price is too low and they need to make the share price higher because maybe they might get delisted off an exchange. And so now they need to do a reverse split. That doesn't mean you're losing money by having less shares. All that means is now you have more ownership is represented per each share that you have. There are some theories that saying, hey, having this accessibility of having more shares would indicate that the share price is going to go up. But given the fact that most companies split their shares at some point to make them more accessible to investors, it's pretty much a level playing field. And now fractional share investing is even becoming more prevalent, that it's hard to argue in saying that splitting shares is going to all of a sudden give you more value. Dividends are always better. If you have a company that makes $50 in profits, you have 2 decisions. You either leave the $50 in the bank account or you take the money out, and that's what we call a dividend. Now, if the money comes out and it comes to your checking account, well, the company should be worth less that difference, right? Now, if that's not paid out and that $50 stays in the bank account, well, the company should be worth more. So just because a company pays dividends or it doesn't pay dividends does not necessarily mean it's going to be worth more or less. Going back to Berkshire Hathaway, that company has never paid a dividend. That is why the share prices are so high. Now, why would a company want to pay a dividend versus not pay a dividend? Well, that really depends on the business and the industry that they're in. Say there's profits that a company has and they don't have a great way to reinvest it. Well, maybe it makes sense to pay that money out to a shareholder so then you can then take that money and reinvest it in a different company. Or maybe there's some great technology and they're making tons of money on what they're investing the money in. Well, you want that money to be reinvested in that business. You don't want them to pay dividends in that scenario. Another thing that investors fall trap for is looking at dividend yield and always saying higher is better. Dividend yield is calculated based on the amount of money that's paid out in dividends divided by the share price. So if we think about it, if the share price is going down, that means the dividend yield is going up. Well, that's generally good. That means you're getting more bang for your buck, but you have to remember if the share price is going down, there might be a reason that investors are saying, hey, this is going to be worth less in the future. And so that dividend might not be sustainable. To look at it another way, say you bought a house and you were collecting a certain amount of rent, let's say the house keeps going down, down, and down, and down, well, it's probably unlikely that you're going to be able to collect the same amount of rent in the future. 3, you don't lose money when you don't sell. Well, that's true from a tax perspective. Nothing's happening. If you don't sell, you're not having any sort of tax ramifications. But actually, when you sell at a loss, you do have a tax benefit oftentimes if you're not in a retirement account and it's in a taxable account. Now, where investors get really stumped on this is they say it's paper losses. And so that's the way to be able to hold on to a company and make them feel better in saying, oh, okay, well, I'm losing money, but I'm not really losing money. And I think where this stems from oftentimes is people buying stuff that they didn't even want to own in the first place. You should have no business buying something that you don't want to own in the first place. This is where you have an investor buy a biotech company and they know absolutely nothing about biotech. And then the company share price drops and they say, okay, well, if I just hold on to this, it'll come back, right? I haven't actually lost money. Well, you probably shouldn't have bought that company in the first place. So only buy things that you want to actually own in the first place. 4, higher share price is not always connected to the size of a company. As we just saw, companies can split shares. So you can have a lot of slices that represent the actual ownership of a company. You can have a company that has $100 a share and it goes from $100 to $200 a share versus a company that has $1,000 a share and it goes up to $1,100 a share. Don't think in dollars, think in percentages. $100 to $200 a share means the company has doubled in size. $1,000 to $1,100 a share means the company has only gone or increased 10% in size. So important to think percentages, not dollars. 5, a low share price today relative to its history does not always mean it's a good buy. GE, when it first became a publicly traded company, all the way up until the dot-com boom, it was an amazing stock performer. If you bought GE during the dot-com boom and you've sat on it as a long-term investor for the last 20 years, you would have been really disappointed. Now, it has done quite terrible. Now, if you have owned GE over short periods of time, maybe in a 3-month period, a 6-month period, yeah, the stock is going up and down, and maybe you have made money or could make money. People make money with falling knives all the time in the stock market. But why do you want to own something that already has a bias or you already have the odds stacked up against you? Companies that exist today don't necessarily mean they're going to exist in the future. You had in the early 1900s, railroad companies. Those were the hot things. People would be hard pressed to even name 3 railroad companies today. All the largest companies today are not companies that oftentimes existed before. So if you own something today and just because it is cheap today and you look at a chart 3 years ago, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to always rebound. So keep that in mind when you make your next purchase decision.